Baptist podcast, we gather around to talk theology, politics, and the sweet banjo sound. Kevin Thompson leads the way, teacher and preacher too. With a men's quartet, the harmonies ring true. Gather around the mic, let's find our way, singing praises, strumming banjo strings all day. Amputated Baptist podcast, where we all belong. Join the harmony, let it carry us along. With a passion for faith and a banjo by our side, we don't deep, we don't hide, we take it all in stride. From parables to politics, every topic on the table, let's harmonize together, let's make it stable. In the chord progressions, we find our peace, singing praises, strumming banjo strings all day. Amputated Baptist podcast, where we all belong. Join the harmony, let it carry us along.
Theology, politics, and a little bit of banjo. You're listening to the Amputated Baptist podcast. And now, here is your host, the Amputated Baptist himself, Kevin Thompson. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we have another great episode in the pantheon of great episodes of the Amputated Baptist podcast. We have missionary Austin Brown, my conversation with him. So I met him a few weeks ago at church at Faith Community State Line. We were having our missions march, and Austin led things off. I'd never met him before, but after meeting him, I thought, man, I gotta get to know him a little bit. And so I invited him to my classroom, and I said, hey, listen, I want to do some double duty here. I'd like to air this on my podcast, but I also wanted to share this with my students. So this was a live edition of the Amputated Baptist podcast. So live in my classroom. So I had to cut out some things, basically the kids' questions at the end. So if there's a hard cut at the end, that's why. So this is my conversation with Austin Brown, missionary to Germany. I'll have some more info about him on the other side. So here's that conversation.
Amputated Baptist podcast, where we all belong. Join the harmony, let it carry us along.
We're recording with a live studio audience, so this is where you guys clap and cheer. Okay, and since this will be on my podcast, this means it'll probably be the largest podcast audience I've ever had. Wow. So anyway, all right. So Austin, you are a missionary to Germany.
Yes.
But you were born in Alabama.
Born in Alabama.
You grew up in Florida.
Grew up in Florida, and Tennessee, and Montana.
Oh wow. So you get around.
Just a little bit. I moved 14 times before I graduated high school.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
So I want to know first, are all the Florida man stories we hear true?
Oh, they're very true. And worse than what you see. More often.
Yeah.
Florida man, Louisiana man. The Louisiana man is even worse than Florida man.
Oh, I'm imagining crocodiles and gumbo. That's all I could think of with Louisiana.
Meth-fueled crocodiles.
Meth-fueled crocodiles. Wow, that should be the title of this podcast episode. Meth-fueled crocodiles and gumbo. All right, so tell us first. Give us your testimony. How did you come to know the Lord, and then how did the Lord kind of lead you into missions work?
Sure. So my father works in missions work. He helps organize teams to go around the world and build Bible schools and orphanages and churches. And he's been everywhere doing that between South America all the way through China. Meeting with the Religious Affairs Bureau people over there. And that afforded me the opportunity to travel quite a bit with him. So when I was 13 years old, the Berlin Wall fell. And we already had a trip lined up to go to Germany and hear from different missionaries and national pastors and see how could we help them with their building needs. And so we got there and we decided to take a trip up to Berlin. So I got to be there and knock off pieces of the wall and, celebrate with everybody. And I got back on the plane that week, at the end of the week, flying back to America going, I'm going to live there someday. I love this place. The whole experience was great. I did not have a relationship with the Lord. I was very turned off to everything I was seeing inside of the church. kind of the classic, look at all these hypocrites, why do I want to be a part of this type crowd. In the South, things can get interesting really fast when you get into church and you get into church politics on some things. It's its own little special brew down there. So there was a lot of stuff that kind of turned me off to the church in general. I was that kid that your parents are always dragging you there, and then I'd sneak out to go smoke marijuana or whatever during the service and show up at the very end just in time to go home. There was a guy in the youth group that started making a personal investment in my life and sharing with me the love of God and how really my life was going into this unimaginably destructive way. Why would I do this to myself and base my life and my eternal security on what other people might do that is not going to have a direct effect on my life? And watching his life and how passionate he was about the Lord and how he was the first person I came across who he said, I love to read the Word of God. I actually believe, man, he loves to read the Word of God. And he would dig in and he loved people, and I saw how his life was changing, and the closer and closer he was growing to the Lord, and I wanted that. Didn't want all the other stuff that I saw, but that was really attractive to me, and I went, man, okay. So I started opening my life a little bit. Long story short, March 26, 1996, I would mark as the day that the love of God just encapsulated me, and I was brought in faith. From that point, it was almost like this kind of connect the dots. My goal up until that point was I was going to go study psychology, and then I wanted to practice in Germany. I was isolationist. I didn't want to be around anybody that I had grown up with. Didn't have a whole lot of friends in that area. School gives me this tick when I walk in. Man, I was not a great student. I did not have a good time. Things were rough in my life and that kind of stuff. So I want to put as much distance as I could between myself and anybody that I knew. And then redemption happens, and you go, oh, there's actually an eternal purpose to my life, and I should think bigger than what's gone on inside of me and what I want. And it's kind of like those, like connect the dots almost, right? So you're sitting there and you're going, I love this country. God's put this burden in my heart to reach people. I've already studied German. Man, let's give this a shot. Let's see. So I searched out as many people as I could to see who knows somebody who possibly knows somebody who's in Germany that I could go work with. And I wound up in this little city in the formerly German Democratic Republic area, so Eastern Germany, called Gera. And I was sharing last night, my job while I was there, we had a youth group that had 2 or 3 people in it. That was it. It was a struggling church. They had taken over a compound that was used by the Nazis during the World War II for political prisoners and was used by the GDR during the Cold War for interrogations. Well, this church had bought it then, and there needed to be a lot of work done. So I was digging a ditch that was 3 feet wide, 6 feet deep around this entire compound, sweating like crazy during the summer. And in the middle of it, I went, if all I do in Germany is dig ditches around churches for Jesus, that's fine with me. This is where it's got to be.
And you said last night you were just using a shovel.
I was just using a shovel.
You weren't using
none of anything. And I got this German guy, going, don't hit water pipes. That's all he could say in English. I was going, okay, I'll do my best, man. I'm not a professional. I'm, 20. So that was it. And it just kind of went on from there. 2 years later, door opened for us to move to Brussels, Belgium. I worked at an international youth group at an international church, Brussels Christian Center. My wife, soon-to-be wife, was working across the street at a place called the European Ministry Center. It housed various ministries that reach out around Europe. And from there, the door opened for us to move to Berlin. Planting churches in Berlin, planting churches in Stuttgart, working with a church in the city of Ulm. Now we're head pastors in Heidelberg, and we run a business as mission coffee house and a missionary training hub.
So if this were a Tuesday, I'd take you to the Holy Roast Cafe, which is right here. holyroast.wordpress.com, something like that.
Is it open after this class?
No, unfortunately. But, okay. So a couple of things I want to kind of unpack there.
Yeah.
First, how did you talked about the crisis of your faith early on, but then you had a second crisis. You met who we now call Pastor Connor. How did that almost, wreck your life completely? And
having Connor with us was a massive blessing, actually. I heard that there was a guy from Louisiana that was interested in missions in Germany, and we actually met up at a conference in Rome, and that was our first point of contact. And then he raised his money and came over for, how many weeks were you there? 2 or 3, I think?
First one was 3 weeks.
3 weeks. And then he met his team in another area of Europe for ministry. And during that time, he was just kind of solidified, hey, I want to come here and I want to work at Stuttgart. And so he wound up being there for about a year and a half, and it was great.
So I asked that because Connor is going to do our spiritual month this week, so I want to kind of introduce Connor to you guys. For those of you who don't know, he's the youth pastor at Faith Community State Line. That way. Is it? That way. Yeah. Anyway.
Connor did exactly what you're hoping somebody will do. He came in and went, I don't know that I necessarily know how to do this, but I'm willing to learn. And started working in so many different areas. And I think correct me if I'm wrong, you start seeing God kind of fine-tune things in your life at that point.
100%. I mean, it was, I was young as well. I just turned 20, 5 days before I moved. But, I think it solidified some of the aspects of, the Lord has positioned me to teach, study of the deeper things in life, things like theology and etc. were kind of solidified in that time frame. Not just oh, this is fun for me, but I want to help people get this.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the things we talked about in this past, this is our systematic theology class, by the way.
Oh, great.
And we had just talked about finding God's will for your life. And we said one of the things is just this idea that it's not something that God's dangling across, see if you can find this. See if you, no.
Carry it out there in front of the donkey and go get it.
But it's something that God uses the desires of your heart already. And so you already had a desire to go to Germany. So I think sometimes we fear that if we give up our will for God's will, that he's going to send us to the worst possible place ever. And, so I don't want to do that. But God took the desires you had, and you started moving in that direction. Even though you didn't know exactly how all the pieces were going to put together, you had a desire, you followed that desire, and God opened the doors.
Yeah, that's part of the adventure, not knowing, being able to rely and trust on God and his Holy Spirit to lead and guide you, not having to have the answers. I don't need the answers, he has the answers.
Right.
When my faith is built upon him, I can fully trust him in everything that we do. To provide the finances that we need, to open the right doors, to close the doors. All I have to be faithful to do is to listen and obey. Because if he's King of Kings and Lord of Lords, then he has full right and sovereignty over my life.
Yeah.
So who am I to say this is a difficult area, or I no longer want to be here, or this is a ministry I want to be in? But I do think he does work within those natural loves, things that are in our lives, and that's just what I saw him do in me, and he's been faithful every step of the way.
Yeah. Okay, so you're in Germany.
Yep.
And you mentioned the coffee house, and it's you're not just looking to make money.
No.
But this is a ministry. So tell us about that, because it's a unique way of reaching people that we don't often think of, because we think of I have to be a preacher. I got to go and accost people as they're walking down the hallway, or walking down the street or something. I just shout at them or whatever. Right. But you're using this coffee shop to actually bring people to Christ. So tell us how you do that.
Yeah. So we have a coffee shop called Heart and Soul Cafe. It's in the middle of our city. It's positioned in an area where right across the bridge from us is the main campus of our university. There's about 46,000 students there. So we have a lot of foot traffic that comes in, and we wanted to create a place, and thankfully the person before me that actually got everything up and running, their heart on this was a place where people can come in and experience the love of God without it being plastered all over the wall. So when you come in, there's different artwork of coffee cups and quotes from the Beatles, Gandhi, Jesus, I mean, you name it, they're up there on the wall, because we live in a very secular society. People aren't going to walk in if it's just Jesus, 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 right? So they come in, they're looking at things. We have different books that they can read. All the people inside of that coffee house, except for one, are on a volunteer base. We have people that are in faith, people that are not in faith. They just want to serve because we put a very high premium on community, on community engagement, and that speaks to our culture. I was speaking last night about, we use this term to exegete scripture.
Yeah.
We exegete culture as missionaries, right? You dig in and you're going, what is it behind here, right? Just like you don't want to just read the Word of God and come up with whatever thought that you have on this. You want to properly pick it apart, expand it, and look and see what are the nuances here and what is the Lord trying to do. That's what we do with culture. And so in our culture, this communal aspect, I'm going to give more so other people can also benefit, high premium. So with the coffee shop, everything is donation based. That's coffee based. You pay for cakes, cookies, anything out of the cooler. That's it. And people love it, and they buy into it, and people want to serve there. We have some of the best trainers that come in from Cyprus and will train our people. They'll get the European barista certificates. It's a way for us to invite other coffee shops to be involved. They can get their certification as well. That helps us to develop relationships further within our community, and eventually we can introduce Christ and the love of God into those conversations, and that's where we're seeing people's lives change. It doesn't happen overnight. And sometimes I don't know, should it happen just overnight, right? I think people need a time to sit with the gospel, to be able to wrestle with this, to really be able to examine their lives in the light of what we are presenting.
That's really important because sometimes we do expect, like what happens, even when we're witnessing to friends here, we share the gospel with them, and it's like we're expecting the light to fall down from heaven, this dramatic experience.
So come on, say yes. I've got this box I need to check.
Right. And so that doesn't happen. I mean, it may happen from time to time, but typically people in order for someone to actually have a changed life, they've got to examine that life, and in light of the gospel, as they're hearing this, maybe even for the first time, it's a complete worldview change. It's a complete change of direction. Yeah. I don't think I'd be comfortable with someone making a decision just like that.
Right.
That changes your entire life.
Right. And I don't know if they have the ability to do that.
Right.
Not just do we want them to, do they have the ability to do that without that time of reflection? Because you're talking about a complete reorientation of the heart. Yeah. And the heart is not changed. I mean, we have regeneration, but those deep-seated heart issues are not changed overnight. It's a process that we call sanctification. So there's all these things for people to wrestle with.
Right.
And I think it's good. I mean, you see people come in and they have a question, and you start answering that, and we've got a young guy who's a huge TikTok influencer in Germany that was playing in the second league of German football.
Soccer.
Soccer.
We're Americans here.
Soccer. He found his way into the cafe. He was invited by a friend he was in school with at the time to come in. He started liking what he was seeing. He started coming to one of the church services. Over a period of months, he has this just radical conversion experience. He meets with my associate pastor now every week. They're in a discipleship group. He's just growing and changing, and now he's using this platform that he was able to build before salvation to start preaching the gospel to people. And you go out on the street with him, and people are going, "Hey man, are you Kevin? Hey dude, can I get a selfie?" and all this other kind of stuff.
Oh, that happens to me all the time.
Yeah. And he goes, his name's Kevin. Yeah. And he goes, "Sure, but let me share something with you first." Right? And he's working it in. Yeah. But God gave him that platform. He's using it for his glory, and it's really kind of cool.
Did you know that I'm a TikTok influencer?
I saw you the other day and I went, influencer.
I did my first TikTok live the other day. It was pretty cool. Anyway, so you're in Germany. Yeah. I'm curious about, so you already had a passion for Germany. You were already learning German. Your wife is not German, but I mean, she already has a missions mindset. Yeah. And so now you have a family there. What's kind of the transition there? Because, I mean, you grew up in the United States, even though you're moving around 14 different times. Right. There's still an American culture and a German culture. So what's that transition for you like?
It's a little different. Culture shock is very real. You get into Germany, and on the outset, you look at it and you go, well, there's so many things that ties together. There's a lot of commonality. The longer you live in a culture, the more you go, oh, there's a lot different here because, again, the heart issues and what people really do value and what they don't value. That's one of the hardest things to overcome at the beginning. Typically, once you move overseas, you're going to be there for a year or longer. About month 4 through 6, you hit culture shock. You run into a wall where you're going, I hate this. These people are backwards. They don't do things the way I do. They won't like, American culture, we want things instantaneously. Hey, I'll just pay more money and get it tomorrow. Germans don't work like that. They don't function like that. You hit this wall and you're going, why am I here and what is going on? And that's when you have, the power of God that sustains you and the call of God that keeps you moving forward. So, language school is where a lot of that starts being stripped away because when you're in a language school, they're trying to teach you not just to translate from one language to another, but to understand why that word holds this meaning and significance in this language in the first place. So there's different words that we can use here that mean, if you just translate them in Germany, it doesn't mean the same thing. Like one that's just coming to my mind right now is chaos. So we can talk very flippantly about chaos, right? I came in, blah. If you came into my office right now, you would go, my desk looks chaotic. I didn't have time to clean up. There you go. I didn't have time to clean up before I left on this wonderful trip to America. And I'm hearing it from the staff back in Germany going, your desk is awful. Well, I would say my desk is chaotic. If you say chaotic about something to a German, we just had this happen not too long ago. One of the Germans goes, well, you can't say that. What are you talking about? No, there was thought put into this. It's not chaotic. Right? So they're looking at it going, no. Chaotic means I didn't put any thought into this at all. I am not respecting you enough to make sure things are lined up and done. It holds a lot more weight. And so when you get into language school and instead stripping away kind of your preconceived ideas of what words mean, because you're having to learn it now in their language, that helps a lot. One of the things we run up to right now is in kind of late-born millennials through today, is you can go overseas but never leave America because of social media, because of YouTube, because of Netflix, Disney Plus. Go ahead, list whatever you want to list. So we have to be really careful about that because you can go and live in another country and never fully enculturate, which means you're going to be ineffective in what you do because you're not speaking that heart language with people. You don't understand their culture. You're just trying to lay on top. Even with churches, we see this happen. People come over, they're a part of big successful churches in Europe, and they want to do that one-to-one in Germany. And it picks up people who are on the fringes of society or who are expats, but it doesn't reach the actual people in that country very well. And that's difficult. So when people come over and they're working with us, they have to shut down every one of their streaming accounts until they learn the language up to a B1 level. So language goes from A1 to C2, and at a B1 level, it's kind of middle of the board. Then they're allowed to get back on into streaming services. We limit them to an hour a week on any kind of social media platform, because if you don't, it's easy to come back home from a long day of language school where you're crying and you hate this and everything's awful and I'm never going to learn this stupid language, right? All this stuff that's going through your mind, and you binge watch Netflix for the next 5 or 6 hours, and you're not out with people, and you're not learning the language, and you're not listening to the news in German and watching things and studying.
So, some of these kids can't imagine just limiting to 1 hour a day of social media. Forget about it.
No.
And then I do also want to mention that, I have students who have been begging me to organize my desk, and so we learned today that, you know what? Back off.
Back off. That's it.
Okay. So, all right. You're in Heidelberg, Germany.
Heidelberg.
And I think Heidelberg Catechism.
Yeah.
Which I'm popping this on you for the first time.
No,
I didn't mention.
Fun.
So, but I think you can handle it. I love the Reformation. We do Reformation Day pretty big up here. I've got my Luther robe, and we play pin the thesis on the door. So when I think of Germany, I think of the Reformation. I think of Luther, and I think of Melanchthon and others who, and it's just a wonderful revival of biblical knowledge and salvation by faith alone, and all these wonderful things. And then, I guess my question is, what happened? Because now we're looking at Germany, and you were talking about last night that you were talking about secularism. We're talking about worldview. And Germany is a very secular place, but it's the home of so many great churches and great movements and whatnot. How did that progress to where it is today?
Church and state. That was a big part of it. There is no separation of church and state, and I don't want to get overly political here.
Yeah.
But,
we have government in this class too, so it's okay.
All right. So everything is tied in from the church into the state. In Germany, if you are German born, not from any other background that would influence your religious leanings, you are typically automatically in either the Lutheran or the Catholic Church. 7% of your paycheck is going to be sent to those churches as a church tax. For you to get out of that, you have to go down to the courthouse, sign a form, remove yourself from the rolls, which we have right now. Hundreds of thousands every year leaving the Catholic and the Lutheran churches. A lot of that is because of abuse of church funds, the sexual improprieties of priests and bishops, extravagant living, and this belief that this holds no weight, nor should it, in my life. Secularism is best kind of looked at as a big mosaic that you're building in your life, and it's just you're interchanging one piece for another on this project self. When religion becomes compulsory, and I'm not talking about our faith in God, I'm talking about a religious institution becomes compulsory, and your life is built around that religious institution. That's the tradition that you're in, and it never goes any deeper than that. You're setting yourself up for failure eventually. And so you had people, I mean, you're talking about the Reformation, then I know you're familiar with Johannes Tetzel. Right? When a coin, I don't know how you say it.
When a coin in the coffer springs, a soul from purgatory. No, when a coin, clings spring. Yeah, we just messed that up completely.
Right? And so you have that. There's been a lot of spiritual abuse that has happened in people without that relationship and without the ability to, I don't want to say ability, that's the wrong word. There's been misuse from the church. And then you have World War I that comes. You have World War II that happens. You have Catholic Church leadership that is cozying up with the Nazis and not speaking out against atrocities. You have the Lutheran Church that's pulled back from a lot of things, minus people like Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He starts gaining a lot of traction because he's willing to go out and start saying different things. And afterwards, people they have this existential question of, if God is so good, why did all this happen the last 30 years, right? And then we see these church leaders that pull back, and where are we now? Well, you know what? We're never going to let that happen again. We're not going to build a society around this again. We're going to build a society around things that last and are stable, i.e., money, gold, prosperity, education. And Germans were never dumb. I mean, some of the greatest minds in the world come from there. But that's kind of how you get to this point, right? There's a vacuum that's created. There's not this it's religion for tradition's sake. Not religion for change lives' sake.
And I think that's really important in our setting, because and that's one of my fears of a Christian school, is that you do have some compulsory thing. We are forcing you to do some things.
And that's not necessarily bad.
Right.
That's a good thing. My life has developed because of things
Yeah.
that I was asked to do and kind of pushed to do.
But when we mistake those things for spirituality,
Yeah, sure.
so like in this class, you've got to do your devotions. You've got to do your devos each week, which, by the way, you got to do this week. And I force you to read the Bible, and we do, our Music Friday, which we'll do Music Friday this week, and then all these things. We force you sometimes to go to church and all this stuff, and sometimes if we just follow these rules, we check off these boxes and we're good.
Right.
But that's far from the truth, because you could do all those things just out of rote, out of just a mechanical, clinical type of thing, and it's not
You become
real.
robotic.
Yeah. Okay, so you're there in Germany, and talk to us about secularism. You talked about that last night. We got about 10 minutes left or so, but talk to us a little bit about that. How is the German society secular, and how do you deal with that? Or define. That's a big question. Let's break that down.
We're going to jump in here.
Let's talk first. What is secularism?
Okay, I'm going to pull up my official definition here so I do not butcher this.
Okay, so I actually had a slide on this, and I forgot to turn it on. So you just get to listen, because I don't feel like getting up.
Ready? Here we are. I'm going to read you from my notes.
So this is probably something you should write down.
My mind's like a steel trap. All right. A society or worldview in which religion is not at the center of human life. A society or worldview which religion is not at the center of human life. We talked last night. That's a relatively new phenomenon. In just about all of human history, there's something that society is basing itself around. There's a totem. There's a statue. There's a belief. There's a sun god. There's a something that's there. Even in Athens, Paul goes in and goes, people of Athens, you've got this statue to somebody, to the unknown God. Let me introduce you to him, right? So it doesn't have to be, the worldview, like we talked about last night, logical or illogical, conscious or subconscious, it's there. And that's where it gets it's where it gets a little tricky. There is nothing at the core of your life that anchors you to who you are. So you now get to define what makes self good. Well, self is not good. And so the more you try to improve self, the more down that rabbit hole you're going to go, the more frustrated you grow. We have horrendous numbers of depression and suicide and isolation in Germany because there's only so much you can do to improve yourself before you come to the realization that you can't improve yourself enough to stop that project. Yeah. There's only one thing that improves, and that's Christ. And he doesn't just improve, he overtakes, right? Yeah. And he makes all things new. And if you take him out of the equation, there's nothing to anchor life. And so we spend as much time as we can building relationships with people. That's why we do business as mission. You're right. It's not to make money. We don't make a whole lot of money. We pay for all of our expenses. We can hire one person part-time, and we clear maybe $1,000 on the other end, maybe on most months. But it's the people coming through the door that we want, so that those doors to their hearts open up, so that we can explain the gospel to people and see people change. And so we are very intentional with where we go, where we shop, what times. I mean, we get people's schedules down. Yeah. And that's where we go to people to see those relationships blossom and bloom. Usually when I walk into a place the first time and they hear my accent, they know I'm not German. I can speak German, I'm fluent, but they know I'm not German. So they'll ask, why are you here? Are you in the military? No, too fat to be in the military. What are you talking about, man? You don't want me running after the enemy? I'll get winded in 10 seconds. Oh, you work for Daimler? No, I'm not an engineer. So why are you here? Well, I'm a pastor of this church over here. Oh, okay, that's interesting. And then over months, those questions keep expanding, and eventually you get to talk to them about the gospel, and we're seeing people come to faith over and over again through business as mission. It's the number one way that people in Europe are coming to faith right now. In America, if you go to most church planting seminars or conferences, they say planting a church is the quickest way to see salvations. In Germany, it's not. It is business as mission. You are a normal person in the community with a heart to reach that community, And you're opening up something where people can connect.
Yeah.
And over time, that bridge is built and relationship with Christ can be shared.
Yeah, so obviously you have a Christian worldview.
I do.
And you're engaging with people who think entirely different than you.
Yeah.
And I like you brought up Paul in Athens and Mars Hill, because that's a great message. Because here's Paul understands the culture that he's in,
yeah,
and references these things. So you have to, as you said, exegete the culture to understand where people are. And so you're building bridges by establishing these relationships, getting to know people where they are, so you can begin to move them to where they should be, in a sense.
Yeah. And so we allow people to see very transparently into our lives. When I sit down and I meet with somebody, if we're over at the cafe, I don't just talk about the good stuff. I talk about where I mess up as a dad.
Yeah.
Where I mess up as a husband, where I got things wrong, where my anger got the best of me. I may have said something really sharp towards my wife or something like that.
Have you ever thrown chicken nuggets?
I haven't thrown chicken nuggets. No.
That may have happened once.
That may have
in
happened
here,
once.
yeah.
There you go. No, I've never done that. But there's times then that I go back and I say, I needed to apologize to my wife and ask her for forgiveness for the way that I spoke to her, yesterday.
Yeah.
And they go, why? Well, because I have this deep-seated view of my faith and of God and how He's called me to live and take care of my wife and to treasure her. And that wasn't very treasuring towards her, what I did the other day. And so I felt like I needed to make this right. And those kinds of conversations made me see like light bulbs going on in people's lives. And so being very transparent with people, we don't have to be fake. People can see through that a mile away anyway. Right? We live open and transparent lives. We're real with what we celebrate. We're real with when we mourn. We're real when we make a mistake, and real when we get it hopefully right on some things. And that helps open those doors.
And so I'm hoping that what some of you are taking away from this is we study worldviews not just for the purpose of a academic test or knowledge that we're checking off on our whatever thing we use as teachers to syllabus, sure, curriculum or whatever. I'm trying to think of the long term. I'm not a good teacher. Thanks. No, you're not, Art. Okay, but anyway, but we're doing this so that we understand where people are, and we understand that other people live in a complete different reality than we do. And they don't realize it, and we don't realize it. We're not going to reach people with the gospel by just doing the same thing we do with every person, or doing the same thing we've always done in years past. We have to be able to understand, exegete the culture. Yeah, I think that's a really good way. And you guys remember exegesis and eisegesis, right? Yeah. Good. You'll need to know that when Connor preaches the difference between eisegesis and exegesis. We'll talk about how he fails in that regard later. All right. Well, we are kind of running out of time, so thank you for coming, and I appreciate your time. Yeah, you guys can file. Okay, but because you're a guest on this podcast, you get the fine merch we have to offer. So you get the Amputated Baptist lanyard.
I'll take it.
You get... Hold on. Okay. You get the pin.
Come on.
You get the sticker. And you get the pen.
Thank you.
See? I load you up with gifts. Connor never got anything when he was on my podcast. You got a sticker, but...
Blessed and highly favored of the Lord.
All right, if you would like to learn more about Austin Brown and his family, you can check him out on his social media. Look at the Browns in Germany on Facebook. Also, Browns in Germany on Instagram. And he's got links there. If you'd like to give, you can do that, and I hope you will. And you can check out his church out there in Germany. all you have to do is log on to I'm old, I'm sorry, I say www. I know you don't have to say that, but lifechurchheidelberg.org, lifechurchheidelberg.org, and you can find some of those social media things on that website as well. And, again, you can give. Missionaries always are in need of a little extra cash. It takes a little bit more to do the ministry when you're in a foreign country. So I hope you will consider giving. Well, thank you for joining us. Again, I hope you're going to join us next week. I've got some things planned. I hope that everything works out. I guess we'll find out next time you listen. So thank you, all of our listeners. We just broke through 10,000 downloads. So thank you all for listening. Check out our website at amputedbaptist.com. You can check us out on Facebook. Google search our group. That's Amputated Baptist Podcast. Check that out. Check us out on Twitter. Check us out on Instagram. You're not going to regret that. So until next time, have a great rest of your week.
Singing praises, strumming banjo strings all day. Amputated Baptist Podcast, where we all belong. Join the harmony, let it carry us along.